And here we are, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday's Wham. I'm Dean Zachary, your host. We are creating beyond calculation, beyond politics, beyond the big two. And we have a pretty full house tonight. This is our core group, the loyal attendees here. We've got Barb Kaleberg, the Empress of the Inks. We've got Rob Davis, the paragon of pencils. Our superior skeptic, Aaron Humphreys, one of the wizards of wordplay, Scott Wakefield, and there's possible rumor that the word bomber himself, John Medic III, might show up later. You just never know. Even Brent Larson may show up. But we are thankful to our sponsor, Daytona Beach Comic Convention, as always. And we always like to start with announcing our subject for tonight, which is Unraveling Time Traveling. So I hope you guys have had some time to kind of review in your heads what time stories you like, what you don't like, what's the pros and cons of time travel stories, and how they can work or how they can
incredibly confusing.
Yes.
I love unraveling, not solving, not anything like this. We're just going to keep
unraveling time traveling. And also not just the pop culture references we have in comics and movies, but also are there any time traveling? I know Kalis has some time travel coverage in it. Brent may be here later to talk about that. But do any of you guys have any time travel in your stories? I know mine does not. Silverblade does not at this time. Barb, what about you? Any time travel stuff you've worked on either for Silverline right now or before Silverline that you enjoyed?
No, Divinity has no time travel in it, and about the only time travel story that
right now
I can tell you is that I spent a day on the set of Quantum Leap.
Oh, fun!
Wow,
that is so cool.
So
how'd you swing that?
It was I was with Innovation Comics back then, and the writer, we were doing Quantum Leap comic books. I wasn't even on the book. But the writer for the book was incredibly timid, and they said they're sending me to the set. This is during San Diego Comic-Con one year. He says, tomorrow they're sending me up to spend the day on the set of Quantum Leap, and I'm terrified. Would you go with me? And I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yeah,
and it was a wonderful, wonderful day. It was the episode with Brooke Shields.
Oh,
and
cool!
Wow.
I spent the entire day watching the same scene over and over,
over
and
over.
Yeah, welcome to TV. Yeah.
They're in a raft out in the Mediterranean Ocean, which was actually the Cement Pond in the back lot of Universal Studios, and with a canvas back there with clouds painted on it, and a guy in a wetsuit out of camera range. Behind the boat going like this.
Making waves.
That's
and
then
awesome.
they would and Dean Stockwell was standing on the dock outside of camera range feeding his lines to Scott Bakula. And they would get this wind machine going, really plug it in, and it would get winds would be whipping and the waves would be going, and they'd yell, cut the wind, and they'd cut it and they go, go. And they'd say a few lines and they'd stop and then they go, get the wind. They get the wind going again. And it was a lot of fun. And one of my best memories of there is that Dean Stockwell happened to have his mom on set that day.
Oh no.
A lovely little old lady. And we were in the catering tent, and here I could see her taking rolls, putting them in her purse. Wrapping them up in napkins, putting them in her purse, because I'm sure she was from the Depression era, you know?
Yeah.
But when I later saw it on TV, you would swear it was in the middle of the Mediterranean Ocean.
That's
That's pretty crazy what they do. Yeah,
gorgeous.
Yeah. It's amazing what they can pull off. But tell me a little bit about why you think Quantum Leap worked as a time travel based story.
Well, I think it worked because it was vignettes, and it was different story every week, which kept it fresh, kept it moving, and they covered a wide variety of time. Now, wasn't it supposed to be, it had to be within his lifetime?
Correct.
I believe
Yes.
so. Correct.
Yeah, something. Yeah, I don't think you can
Uh-huh.
go too. But I mean, I remember hearing rumors. Now, don't quote me on this. That the season they were going to make it got canceled, but the season they were planning to make, he was supposed to jump into like Magnum PI, I think, and then he's supposed to jump into a cartoon,
No,
Yes.
that's kind of cool.
I remember
which is kind of a
reading
cool
about that,
concept. But I
yes.
was
Yeah.
like, well,
Yeah.
that doesn't really like they were going like, what else can he put him into? But I think it was Magnum PI. They're going to jump into another show or something.
Uh-huh.
It was an interesting concept because he wasn't bodily
Mhm.
time jumping. It was just like his consciousness. was
And
time
Yeah.
jumping.
I saw the last episode, and it's been years since I've seen it. But this came up recently because they're actually redoing Quantum Leap. They're starting it
The
again.
third.
And,
Okay.
Was it with Scott Bakula?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I would
Okay.
assume he
Well,
might be in
Sandy
it. You know,
Dean
like
Stockwell, didn't he pass away recently?
Right, he did.
Recently,
Yeah.
so
oh,
And
did
Scott
he really? I
Bakula's-
didn't know that.
He
Sweet
did.
guy. Really
Yeah.
sweet guy.
Scott
Um,
Bakula's on CSI.
CSI.
No,
NCIS.
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 New Orleans.
Okay.
New Orleans. Yep. No.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, because they were saying. Now I remember the end that I just got the sense that he basically met God in the bar.
Yes.
And I got the sense that when he went to the quantum leap chamber, it killed him. And basically, he'd become an angel or kind of a guardian angel, and that was jumping into people.
Yeah.
That's
'Cause
what I took it as. Now, apparently, from what I was reading, somebody said in the last episode, God said you could go back to you could have gone back home anytime. But it was like his
Interesting.
desire to want their help kept him going.
Okay.
Something.
Okay.
Because I do
So-
remember through the series, like Satan would show up. There were like
Yeah.
these weird
Yeah. and
religious overtones to it, and at the end, it says, "Well, he basically turned into a guardian angel, and
who
it was a soul jumping."
What was the name of Dean Stockwell's character? I can't remember. What was his name?
the guy who would help him?
Yeah. Al.
Al?
'Cause- and
Yeah.
Al would have that little device, but he would always look. Wouldn't he look up when he was having trouble? Or my
Wasn't Al
Yeah.
just actually an
Yeah.
AI?
I
No.
thought he was supposed to be, but
He
I
had a
can't.
little. He talked to
I thought he
Ziggy,
was.
right? We never knew who Ziggy
Ziggy.
was.
But it
Mhm.
was, yeah, because it was like at the end of the series, he brought Al back to like meet this girlfriend or so. It's been so long, and I have to
Yeah.
watch it.
Yeah.
I love
But I
that
remember the
show.
last episode, and I thought it was a really cool idea that he had actually died and was just an angel helping,
Mhm,
and he just didn't know it. I'm like, well, that's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah.
But now, I maybe I need to watch the episode. I've not reading people online, like maybe that actually wasn't the case, but that's what I remember. Because I remember him outside the building at the end. He's talking to God like he left the bars outside, and he was
Right.
breaking down because he was just so tired he wanted to go home. And it
Yeah.
was God was like, well, this is like this is what you have to do or choose to do. It was kind of like the burden's on you or something. Like
Yeah.
God is like, well, you don't really kind of have a choice. But it's been so long. I thought that
Yeah.
was a really cool way to wrap up that story, because I know there were religious overtones to it, but I could be getting this all wrong. So I maybe I need to rewatch it.
I
again.
want.
They
I
had-
do.
I
I
think
remember.
I don't
Two
think it
really-
was overt. I think they just
Right.
hinted at it. I don't.
Yeah.
think it was
Yeah, I
overt.
think so too.
But they
I love
had
that
two
show 'cause
really, really unusual and unique concepts in that show, and that is that it wasn't the person; it was the consciousness that was
Mhm.
jumping,
Right.
Mhm.
and that
Mhm.
they deliberately set out to change history. Because
Right.
most
Right.
time travel, you say, "Oh, the butterfly
You can't.
effect."
Right.
You
Yeah.
can't change history, but
Mhm.
they consciously that's what they wanted to do was change history.
Right.
Which
Mhm.
I think is why it works, because this is one I was wanted to talk about,
Yeah.
because I generally I'll flat out state my feelings here. I generally don't like time travel stuff. I really
Mhm.
don't like it because I always feel like it flies out of control.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a cheap way to tell stories.
Gimmick.
Yeah.
Then I feel like it flies out of control. But Quantum Leap was going to be one of my examples that I felt like really, really worked, because they managed it and they kept it within those parameters. They defined their parameters. And Barb, like you said, he is specifically changing this timeline. This person's
Yeah.
he has to stop something from happening or cause something to happen in time. And
Mhm.
it was a great premise. It wasn't like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, butterfly effect, or oh, we can't do this, or what happens if this, or it.
Do you know
One
what
of my most
the
annoying
butterfly effect?
annoying time travel
Yeah.
pet peeves. You can't meet
What's that?
yourself because it'll
Yeah.
end the universe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It was the butterfly effect, and I could be wrong. I think it came from a story called "The Sound of Thunder" by Ray Bradbury.
Okay.
So "The Sound of Thunder," I think it was Ray Bradbury wrote it. It was a really cool story, and it was these guys that would found a way to go back and hunt dinosaurs in the past. Like, it was these rich guys who would do
Wow.
big game hunting, and they'd found a way to time travel to the past, and they could hunt dinosaurs as like big game. But it was like they said there was this trail. So when you go to the past, there's a certain trail you have to stay on. If you don't step off the trail, you'll alter the future, right? Which makes you think, well, how did they build the trail in the first place? But regardless, they built, without altering. But they, don't step off the trail. If you stay on the trail, you can hunt these things and do whatever. Well, one of the guys accidentally steps on like a moth or a butterfly that flies on the trail, and that actually completely changed the future. It was that one single act, was that butterfly effect that was the cascade. So when it went back to the future, it completely altered it. I think that's where that term comes from. They made a movie out of it called The Sound of Thunder, and it wasn't very good, but the story itself was pretty good.
The concept is basically that a chaotic system, like an atmosphere, small changes in conditions can then alter the course and cause an unpredictable variation.
As far as chaos theory, But I think in time travel, because there's a video game I played the way they call it the same concept, but it is a theory in nature where, like, the beating of a wings here can cause hurricanes.
Sure. In the Amazon,
right,
a butterfly
right.
flaps its wing in the Amazon, and over here there's a tornado.
Yeah. There you go.
Which in the Michael Crichton. Which one is it where they travel back to a medieval timeline?
Yes, timeline.
I think that's timeline. Yes,
and the scientists in that, the one that's sending them all, like, goes on a tirade about how, are you saying that one man screaming in a stadium full of screaming voices, his voice will have an effect on the outcome? And so he kind of like throws out the butterfly effect, because they talk about that. Well, we're going to travel back to medieval time. How are we going to affect? And he's like, you have zero effect on it, other than this thing you're trying to do right now.
It's weird because when they talked about, I used to listen to stuff from quantum mechanics and quantum theory all the time. And one of Einstein's theories that time is, and it's harder to wrap my head around. And again, if I mess it up, I apologize. But the way they showed on the show is time, all of time is like an even feel, think of like a blanket across the universe. So if you're here in this blanket, you can go anywhere. Like, time is all of the things that have happened in history, in the future, in the past, all happening at once, the same time.
Yes.
You just can go to different areas, like on that blanket, to different parts of time. So it illustrates the fact that time travel is possible. It would take a massive amount of energy to even do that, because you're bending space-time. But when I saw that, I'm like, that's interesting. I'm like, it's weird because we think of, because people always say, like, when you think of time, you think of it like a book. When you think of the past, you think about it on your left. When you think of the future, you think about it on your right, because you're reading a book, left to right, which always curious. And I wonder if the Japanese think of past on the right, like vice versa. But when you start to think of time all in the same plane, like the same, it just completely transforms your idea of time. Like, well, I guess you could technically do this. And would it affect other parts of the timeline? I don't know.
Well, it depends on whether
theoretical.
That's all theoretical. It depends on whether you buy into, like, the domino theory of change one thing and then all of a sudden we get into time travel meeting the multiverse concept, which they're definitely connected. And right now we're in a pop culture theme where multiverse is a really big subject again, and time has a lot to do with that. Obviously, Avengers Endgame had that deal. Obviously, the Spider-Man movie most recently dealt with
and the upcoming Doctor Strange,
which is funny because all of this stuff are scientific theories that have come in the vogue or whatever, and then they put them in the movies. The multiverse thing had come in. They say there are 11 now. People get it. So when they talk about dimensions, I had the research there. So when they talk about dimensions in science, are not talking about different realities. They're talking about dimensions of like 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, 4.5, and there's 11 dimensions depending on the surface and flat you can see. So in science, it's a little different, but the dimension name sounds cool, so we call it different dimensions.
We call it that,
It's in pop culture, but in science, it means something different. Which
the Rainbow Academy is doing time travel.
Are they? Rainbow Academy? Okay.
Oh, good show.
Right.
I don't know that show. But what I like about
I'm sorry, the
Umbrella Academy.
Umbrella Academy.
I don't know why I said Rainbow.
So
Rainbow.
What would you guys say about when a time travel concept goes wrong, and if creators who are listening want to do stories that involve time travel, what pitfalls should they avoid? What hasn't worked for you as writers and viewers and artists?
I'm sorry to just jump in here because this
No,
is like
please.
storytelling.
Go ahead.
I feel like time travel can be a crutch, or you have to really, 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 really think about it if you're going to put it in. And if you don't put enough thought to it, you can really mess it up. So whereas like Back to the Future.
Okay.
So one of my big things with time travel, I always wonder, like, why don't you go back farther to give yourself more time? Why don't you go back way back to kill the guy instead of stop him from doing the thing? I understand, but like that can be a big problem. But they always go back just enough time to solve the problem. Back to the Future did it as an accident. He punched in the time and. Now there's a problem. And there's a lot of things with every time travel movie, Endgames, the Star Trek, Lost, you can talk about their time traveling. If they have the ability to time travel, whereas like Back to the Future, he didn't. It was like a one and done, and then now we're in trouble. We got to figure out how to do it again. That's great. You're limited. But when you have the ability to time travel, like Harry Potter, and I'm for all the Harry Potter fans out there, Hermione had the time thingy.
Time Turner.
I feel like she could have solved a lot of problems with that. Now, I'm sure you could nitpick the book and find out like why she couldn't. But I feel like whenever there's the ability for time travel that's that easy, you can solve a lot of problems.
Well, Harry Potter is full of multiple. You just have to. I mean, the fact that their magic is so powerful, and yet they're hiding from a technological society that.
Right.
For all intents and purposes, is much less powerful. I mean, Voldemort just himself could overtake the human world. It's like, well, why are they hiding from humans?
Right.
There's a lot of things in that story where it's just like, these guys with their magic are pretty much gods.
I
why
think
are they
a sniper,
hiding?
but couldn't a sniper just take out Voldemort? Like, I
You
feel
would
like
think.
because
Unless they can stop the bullet or something.
Right, they're dodging the spells. They're always dodging spells, but like I think somebody on the hill could just like take
it's weird because they never did the magic to materialize anything. Like they would do spells or whatever, but like nobody decided to like materialize a machine gun to stop this.
Right.
There's lots of things you could do.
Sure.
I mean, you take Harry Potter as it goes, but when you start, Harry Potter is one of those universes that once you stop to think about it, there's like a lot of like, well, this doesn't really.
They could solve world hunger too because they make their own food with magic.
They can make their own food. Yeah. They can solve all forms of slavery. They literally would make a scarcity-free society because it'd be like the Replicator in Star Trek, where you can make your food. You can make Now in the book, they said they actually didn't make the food appear. The movies, in the book, they said that there was like the little elves made the food, and then they made
the elves made the food.
Right. Yeah. But still, I mean, with that power, the amount of world problems they could solve is
really could.
Yeah.
Sure. But we go back to fantasy reality.
Right.
So they create their own world and they stay within the rules. And that's the key that Scott's talking about right there.
Yeah.
If you establish very well a clear set of parameters in the time travel story as well as the magic, but in a time, which is basically the same thing in time travel many times. But if because think about Doctor Strange, right? You got to walk that line with a Doctor Strange type of storyline, which in this case he was affecting time for Spider-Man, No Way Home. Spider-Man never coming home, never going to get home, always going to be lost. No, just kidding. I liked it. But the point being that you have to establish parameters because the problem you get into is you can use it as a crutch to fix everything. Oh, well, we just came up with a spell that gets everybody out of this.
He wasn't really dead, or I went back to save him.
I went back in time, and then we did this. And again, it's all suspension of disbelief, but there's, as we've described many times on this stream before, there is a careful path that is a balance of suspension of disbelief. You're walking a tightrope as a creator where you're constantly balancing, do I go this far? Do I pull back a little bit? Because we are referencing all of our fantasy stories from a foundation of the real world. So the idea is, if I'm going to create a fantasy world, it needs to have a set of clearly defined rules that makes it feel like its own real world, right? Which is why in Batman 1989, if you buy into that world, you don't care that Batman's in a jet shooting everybody with
Right.
Yeah.
with machine guns, and then people aren't really dying, but they would be. But
And he misses them all. I always thought it was funny when he's flying down and missing the Joker with the machine
Yeah.
guns and missing. Joker picks up one gun and
Right.
shoots the plane, and I'm
Yeah.
like,
right. I know, right?
all right.
So, but if you buy into that world, you're like, okay, I'm rolling with you, Tim. You know, this is your world. You're having fun. You're presenting a roller coaster ride for me, and I'm online with you. The way to lose people, there are lots of different ways, and that's what we want to focus on here to help creators understand. If you're going to go time travel with your stories, make the parameters clear, make the wages of mistakes very serious, where they can't just be undone by a whim or a magic spell. What else would you guys throw in there as be careful?
I'm going to throw one thing in there, and that people who write time travel, it's very easy to fall into the trap of using time travel as a Deus ex machina.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can fix everything.
Fix everything at the end. Yeah.
That's what I liked about my favorite. Well, my favorite time travel story is probably Back to the Future more, but probably my favorite concept of time travel that I liked the most was the Terminator films.
Okay.
Because it was just I like the idea of a singularity, that there are certain singularities or things that are meant to happen in the time span of evolution of a human. That,
like a linchpin.
Because in the third movie, the third movie I consider Dark Fate. I don't consider the other one Dark Fate because it was partially written and produced by Cameron. And the one thing I really liked about that movie was the fact, like, this idea of creating an AI was inevitable. That humanity's technology would get to a point, no matter what you do, that artificial intelligence would be construed. Now, why is it always evil? I don't know. They never say that, why it always fights against them. But
it's more fun. It's more
right.
fun.
But the fact that even though Sarah Connor stopped the future in the second one, that it was just inevitable. All you did was kick the can down the road. You had to go through this. The one thing I really did like it is the third movie did make the hero not John Connor, but the hero was Sarah Connor, because she's the one that always trains the hero that's going to fight in the future. So it really was Sarah Connor all along. Yes. But I really did like the idea of that sort of idea of time, that there's certain things in the history or evolution that you can't escape, and not even time travel can fix it. Like, it's going to happen. You can go back and prevent it, but you're not really preventing it. You're just postponing it.
You're kicking it down the road. That's a good, it's a cool idea. That has a sort of inevitable doom to it, like Nordic mythology does, where, like, Ragnarok's coming, guys. You can postpone it, but you can't stop it. End of the world stuff. That apocalyptic tone is it's dark, and I that doesn't surprise me that you like that, Aaron. It works in your psyche, you know.
It does. Well, it was just it was an interesting take on it, because I did like the fact in the third one that there were Terminators continuously falling, that the machines actually sent a Terminator every so many years in case one failed. And I thought that was a cool concept.
Idea. That's
the fact, like, a machine would think that way, it would cover all its bases and then send them all at once.
Did you watch, this is staying on Terminator for a brief moment here, did you watch the short-lived TV series?
Some of it. And I thought some of it was real. I mean, they did some really
That was
cool
actually
stuff.
Pretty good. That was actually
they did some
pretty
cool
good
stuff. And I think it was just, I think a Terminator series could work now. I think it was just too early for that or whatever. But they did some cool stuff. When they went back and, like, they set up a time machine, like one of the banks or something with, like, the metal. I mean, they did some really cool.
They also there's a convention that's done with zombie movies of late, where they adopt a zombie and feel sorry for it, and it goes along with them for the event. They did that with the Terminator. You know, they had the female Terminator.
Summer Glau character.
Summer Glau. I always thought she was great, because she was like, this is the most deadly being on the show, and she's a dancer, which I guess the actress was a dancer at the time.
In real life, Summer Glau's a dancer.
She got to do, like, ballet and stuff, but you got that idea that she was this deadly being that went along for the ride, and she was actually half villain but half protector for them, you know. And I thought that was a brilliant just sort of thing that was added that we didn't have in the movie. We had it in Terminator 2, I guess, with Arnold's subdued Terminator,
but it was reprogrammed.
But I thought that was a cool idea. But again, linchpin to solve one problem that helps clarify things. Those of you who are fans of Star Trek: The Original Series will remember I believe one of the episodes that won an award. I know it won a Hugo Award, maybe even
City on the Edge of
nominated for him.
Tomorrow?
City on the Edge of
Forever.
Forever. Yeah.
Forever.
They had to go back to 30s or Depression era Earth time in order to solve an issue. And Kirk gets a crush on this woman, and of course, you know that always happens.
Isn't that the one
especially back
making,
then, right?
Doesn't he make a few holodeck displays with that woman in the holodeck? In later episodes, doesn't he bring her back?
No holodeck in original series.
No holodeck in TOS.
Maybe I'm thinking of Next Generation. They went back and did.
But yeah, Picard
they
did a 20s
a similar
thing.
They did a similar episode, but in this original one, it was kind of dark. It was written by a famous sci-fi author named Harlan Ellison, and he really put a dark spin on this thing. Basically, what this woman who encountered the disguised Enterprise crew had to die so that the timeline would be preserved, and this was the exact woman that had to die for two purposes. One, so the timeline could be preserved. Two, so they could actually go back to the Enterprise and resume their lives, because something she did. She was I guess she was some sort of civil leader.
She was a peace activist.
Yes.
If
something happens that she would have done, a domino effect that prevents the Federation from ever forming and the Enterprise from ever being built, and for any of that to happen, she had to die.
The President of the United States not to enter World War II when they did in our timeline. She convinced him to hold off, and Hitler and the Axis powers won World War II.
That's it. That's
what happened.
What do you guys like in form of time travel? Do you guys like splinter realities where like there's branches that branch out, or do you like it that there's one timeline and if you affect it in the past, it's going to affect the future? Because sometimes
it depends on how good the writing is.
Yeah, because sometimes they do that and it's multiple timelines. Like, that's kind of a cop out a little bit. Sometimes
it can be.
I mean,
it can be.
I like the alternate timeline. I like those. Like Fringe was good. I really liked Fringe.
Yes.
Fringe
did a great job.
But I know what you're saying. Like I feel like that's where the multiverse thing is going with Marvel. You're gonna get. I feel like they end up becoming worthless. They mean nothing. That's what I feel. If nothing has a consequence, if we're not going to care, we're on this reality where he lives, or this reality where he lives. Nothing matters.
There's not one true reality you have to save, because it's like, well, if this reality sucks, just go to the next one.
Which is really like the crux of Rick and Morty. If anybody's watched Rick and Morty, he plays that up. Nothing matters. And
which is the crux. And they made a joke of that. I mean, talking about that, and he was stating the very point that I was thinking of that. Like, in the context of if you had multiple realities or whatever, like, just kill one. Like one of them, I think one episode, like one of them was dying off, and he's like, "Oh well, I guess there's other ones we can go to."
Right.
Yeah, it's like, who cares, you know?
Well, again, the stakes have to be something that's compelling to the reader or the viewer. You have to have high stakes, and it has to matter. Again, like you were saying, Aaron, if there's all these splinter realities and you can go, well, I'll just go off and live on this reality and go off and live in that reality.
Then it doesn't really.
There's not, there's not a whole lot of risk.
Didn't do that. My other big problem with time travel stories, I don't know why. I think it's budget-wise, maybe, but majority of the time travel stories, they always travel to the past. Rarely do they travel to the future. And the first thing I would think, like, if I got a time machine, man, I'm going to the future. Like, I ain't going to the past.
Yeah.
Did you guys read Did you read the actual Time Machine by H.G. Wells? Have you read that, Aaron?
I've seen the movie. Yeah. I know what it is, but he does.
You would love that. He goes so far in the future. It's like unrecognizable, like scary, dark, like just this landscape he doesn't recognize with little crustaceans walking around. I mean, you're just going, what? I know the Eloi and the Eloi and the Morlocks. I'm talking way even beyond that. He goes so far in the future
in
that
the book.
In the book
he does
that the world is just beyond his understanding. It's like a psychedelic, esoteric landscape, and it just terrifies him. So he has to come back. But that's
I love in that book, because this is like we talk about in writing a story. You're making stuff up, so you just don't talk about it. All he does is build a machine with levers. and he pushes the lever forward.
Yeah.
Sure, man.
He sits down, pushes the lever forward.
Pushes that lever, man. Hey, it's all it takes.
How come in so many time travel stories to the future, though, it's always very dystopian?
You're right.
Yeah.
Because I guess that's more fun. Because what fun would it be if you went and everybody's happily ever after? You'd be like, it's kind of dull. You know, where's the drama, right?
A premise for a storyline I wrote a long time ago had to do with kind of time travel. And it was supposed to be like in our timeline. Well, there were actually two, but there was one where these like giant 60-foot tall humans kept popping in the past and attacking us, and they were almost impenetrable. In fact, I remember in the story, we had the only way we could pierce their skin or whatever was to like shoot something equivalent like a neutron star. If you know anything, neutron just means they're incredibly heavy. But so we would like suspend a magnetic field and use rail guns on it. So I had all these ideas. But what it turned out to be was that they were human beings so far into the future that they had messed up their timeline and were dying. So they were literally coming back to take over the past and then get a second chance.
Oh, well, I think
so
a lot of these
and that was the idea. We had it's like, no, this is our time. So we were fighting ourselves. They were like, well, let's go back in the past, kill all some old stuff, and then we can extend beyond. And that was the idea.
I think they use a lot of the dystopian future timelines as a way of being, having social messages. You know.
I was going to make that point.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I think about.
That's why I kind of like Back to the Future, because that's the only one that didn't really. I mean, they kind of just did like, no, it's just the future, and you know, there's flying cars or whatever, which we all thought about in the '90s. Like when you get to year 2000, we flying car, and they did that in Back to the Future, but rarely do I see that done that much anymore. It's always dystopian.
Well, messaging.
Biff did marry his mom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was funny. I was hanging out with a group. I met some lady the other day that had a coat, and it was cold out. We were outside. It was cold, and she had a little button, and it was a blue button. I'm like, "What's that?" She's like, "Oh, it's a heated jacket. You just hit the button, and it heats itself." I'm like, "What?"
Nice.
And I'm like, "That's like the coat in Back to the Future fries itself." Yeah,
so cool.
When I'm starting to see this stuff, I mean, like I think they did make those shoes that lace themselves. They made variations.
They did.
At the base that they could do that. It's pretty crazy.
I do enjoy. Like I love watching movies like Back to the Future. It went to 2015.
Star Trek.
We don't have that. Yeah, and then you watch Star Trek, 60s Star Trek, and you think of the technology we have. Like somebody put a picture of Data at the keyboard on the Enterprise. I'm thinking, okay, why does Data need to enter information with his fingers? Couldn't he have a running log constantly communicating with the Enterprise? Why would Data? What like? Because
he could be Bluetooth.
Right.
Yeah, he could be on another part of the ship doing something at Bluetooth to the deck, doing two jobs at once. I mean,
exactly. He never need to sleep. Data would be but in the 80s and 90s, like the concept of a wireless connection of him, downloading.
Well, I always thought it was funny that I watched this part of the Discovery show. My friends had me watch season 4. I missed season 1, 2, 3, but apparently I don't need to watch those because I'm watching season 4 and understanding. So I'm like, what great writing, dudes. It's okay, but I did think it was weird that that's supposed to be before the Enterprise, but the technology is light years ahead, and then the Enterprise, all the technology falls, and then so I'm like, you guys, if you're going to do Star Trek with all this crazy technology, it has to be in the future. You can't do that.
Well, and to bring Scott Bakula back into the talk, Captain Archer.
Well, he did Enterprise.
On Enterprise, which predated the Enterprise.
TOS.
Which was great.
Which I think was hilarious, too, because he always had the Enterprise NX-01 had screens with buttons on the side. They never had touch screens on this.
Look at
but they were flat screens.
The original Alien.
Yeah,
I mean they were using typically DOS.
Which I think is hilarious too. That Star Wars, which I love it.
Yeah,
they still put in analog, switches. Like they kept that,
switches.
Which I always think is hilarious too. Like, why does the Enterprise need a throttle? Corvettes don't even have. You press a gas pedal and there's no mechanical connection. There's no.
Well, here's the thing though. I think you could argue that there's a lot of GUI stuff, a lot of user interface comfort that's added in.
Yeah.
Even in car designs. I haven't driven a Tesla, so I don't know. People can correct me if you've driven a Tesla, but the idea is to make a Tesla feel like a fossil fuel car because we're so accustomed to that. Now, after a certain number of generations, that won't matter anymore. So
Right.
yeah, to your point.
I've heard that they're actually, and I think they do this. They record engine sounds for the electric cars because they're silent, because people can't hear them, which can actually be dangerous. If you're walking, you can't hear the car coming.
Right.
Think about a blind person trying to cross the street.
Exactly.
Well,
they're listening for that.
When they introduced continuously variable transmissions that didn't shift, people thought something was wrong. Their car was revving up and not shifting. We got off on technology, but with time travel, like what we have now, and then you think 400 years in the future or 1,000 years in the future,
right?
A lot of times we've got, but then we don't have flying cars and we don't have jetpacks. I want Rocketeer style jetpacks.
How cool is that?
I think it's funny when I
not big
transporters. I want to be able to go to Paris for lunch,
but not those quantum transporters where another Barb shows up. I want the real me to be
where they clone Barb and then kill the original.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A Barb, you're right. And transporters do just like, so you go on Amazon or beep, whatever, it just beams. That's another thing. I never understood why people walked around starships beam to somewhere else on the starship.
Oh, well, strangely enough, they do that Discovery. They actually would just beam themselves, and they're on the bridge. They'll just beam themselves off the bridge and go, which makes sense that you eventually would get to that, even though again it's supposed to be pre-original Star Trek.
Right.
But
again, I actually said to my friend, I'm like, dude, if you could blip around the ship, why are any of these people walking?
Right.
Well, see, they're again, good writing. They tried to make the transporter something special.
Yeah, that's what I think they still need to keep.
Yeah,
they made it too easy in the new one.
If you could stay in a pattern buffer like Scotty, you'd never age. Why not just sleep there?
Right, just sleep there.
Right.
The point, exactly. Point being that it's like time travel in this. If it becomes too conventional and too easy and too casual, it loses its power dramatically. So again, bringing it back to the time travel idea, it has to be something very special for a specific purpose, for a linchpin, a critical strategic moment.
There has
works
to be
better
risk involved.
and risk involved, and
like
it can't
be
be just
and turning up like with limbs coming out of your body.
Exactly. Which
or never
I thought,
getting back, or
the flaws of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the first movie made from the original series, it has a lot of flaws. But one of the cool things, it really did define for us, okay, transporter's still dangerous if it's not calibrated correctly.
Yeah.
They still brought those things in. They also kept the cosmic mystery alive a little bit more. It wasn't just, okay, it's basically Star Wars, but with the Star Trek characters, which I didn't like that either. Star Trek should have a mysterious tone to it.
That's why I was never into. I know a lot of people like Deep Space Nine, but I was never into Deep. I tried multiple times, but to me, it's like if you're not discovering new worlds, new planets, it's not really Star Trek to me. I know it's correct. It's a good story. It's not. Yeah. I don't like when they're discovering new stuff. That's Star Trek to me. That's
very cool. Very, very cool. Very cool.
It's funny. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going
to say the.
Time travel. I'm just going to throw this out. Yeah. The time travel episodes in Star Trek, usually they are very careful, and it serves a specific purpose. You discover new things because of it, and it's putting things right. So again, there's usually high stakes, a dramatic result, high risk. And it's a very unique situation. It's not casual. It doesn't happen every day. What were you going to say, Aaron? Go ahead.
Well, it's funny. I remember one of my favorite time travel stories, and I still, if anyone out there is listening or sees this, I've not been able to find the story. Years ago, it had to do with a time loop. And years ago, I saw it on HBO, and I think it was like one of those Outer Limit type shows. I've tried to look online and other references, and never been able to find it.
Was it?
What?
That's what I thought of.
She said
Groundhog Day.
It was like Groundhog's Day, but it was one of the best sci-fi horror stories I'd ever seen.
Okay, what was it about?
It was this. It starts off with this guy. He's like sitting on a street corner waiting for the bus. And then they show him go through his day. He goes to work. He says hi to the people, whatever. And then 1 hour, he's back on the street corner. He just boink appears, and he's like,
"So
what the
it's
hell's
like
going on?"
Groundhog Day, in that
exactly.
Yeah.
he goes forward and he keeps going forward. He realizes he's stuck in 1 hour. 1 hour of time keeps looping him back. Okay. As he goes through, he started to eventually tries to kill himself, whatever. It doesn't work because he's always snapped back to that 1 hour, that bus stop. And he finally reads in the paper that these scientists were like expecting some sort of time anomaly, like there's some sort of time thing happening there. So he finally in 1 hour is able to track these guys down and go to these scientists and say, like, whatever you said is happening to me. You have to fix it. And the scientists are like, we don't even know what it is. We can't help you. We don't know what it is. We can't help you. And the story just ends with him on the street corner.
Oh,
He's
wow.
stuck in that hour of time for the rest of it. And he can't die.
Wow.
I mean, it's for all eternity. And I sat there and started thinking, like, well, God, how far could you get in an hour? I mean, not only you stuck there, but your perimeter of how far you can physically get before you snap back to that hour. He can never die.
The part about it that's hell.
It is. It was the most horrific thing I've seen.
If you remember, every time you snap back, you can't die.
Exactly.
You are immortal, but you only can live in this 1 hour's worth of time.
It was when I saw that, it's like that's the most horrific thing I've ever seen. I was like, I didn't have to do gore.
That sounds like
nothing.
Outer Limits rather than.
That's what I'm thinking. And I have tried to find this episode. I've put in descriptions and like YouTube, whatever. Nothing. And I know I've seen this. And if
so
this
it wasn't
real.
So you're saying it's an episode in some
like
sort of series,
like a 30-minute hour episode. It was like some episode of something. It was on HBO, and I remember I caught it one night, and I thought that's just. It's like it took Groundhog. Now I can't watch Groundhog Day without thinking of the episode. I'm like, man, if that goes wrong.
Well, speaking of dark and spooky, and launching a ton of rabbit hole speculation internet clubs. If you guys have ever seen Donnie Darko, you ever seen that?
Yeah.
I haven't.
You want to talk about how bizarre that you should watch it just for the bizarre
is a time travel
nature
show.
of it.
Yeah.
It is, and it is just when you find out what's going on, but the way it's presented in such a let's say difficult mystery and horrific way, and you go, what is going on? Is this kid just losing his mind and seeing apparitions? But by the end of it, you understand that it's a dreadful time loop that he's walking through. It's very, very scary though.
It's a classic.
It's a classic. It's one of those subculture classics that people watch it over and over again because they speculated on its meaning. What is it, like 20 years old now, Aaron?
Something
it's
like that. Yeah.
It's
what's his name? His sister started.
Jake Gyllenhaal's.
Yeah.
Wasn't his first big movie or whatever? He's in a high school. He's a high school kid, and something horrible happens to him, and he kind of. I don't know. It's like a cursed main character story that really develops, but very odd. It you brought it to my mind when you talked about the guy stuck on the street corner.
You don't think of time travel as being horrific, but then when you stop and think about stuck in time, and then
stuck in time,
oh yeah, that's
horrible.
That's horror beyond horror.
Right.
I mean, you would go nuts beyond. I mean, hopefully that's your only saving grace is that you go psychotic enough that you don't realize what's happening to you, because beyond that, that's
you just shut down.
Yeah.
Right. So interesting that. Go ahead.
Where did the trope come that you can't meet yourself, or else the universe will?
Oh, that came from the stupid antimatter thing. The idea of like there's matter and antimatter, so if you came back in the same matter, occupied the same space, they would cancel each other out.
Do you remember what was it in a Trek episode, or
I can't
do you
remember where that idea started?
They did a Trek episode like that. It's called.
Was it where it started? Okay, that was the whole idea.
Yeah.
Or was it 12 Monkeys? Do you remember the movie 12 Monkeys?
Yeah.
That was some time travel in that too, and I'm trying to remember if that.
I think they did kind of. That's always been the thing. Is you would. I mean, technically, I don't really think you would turn in the antimatter and matter. They were just saying the same matter can't occupy the same space. But I mean, that's all theory just to make it exciting. I mean, we don't know.
Well, you're number one. If you're years apart, by
you're
then
not the same
your body has replaced most of the stuff you had 10 years ago. Most of the stuff that's in your body is not the same.
Matter can either be
created or destroyed.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's the old Chekhov's gun thing, where if in order to make this story work, you have to set up the rules, and they have to be explained early on,
Exactly.
so that later on it's used to resolve the story or resolve the difficulty. So
which episode of Star Trek did Chekhov have a gun?
I'm talking about the writer Chekhov.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Woo!
He always carried guns.
He was always packing heat.
They were always carrying sidearms.
In all the right places.
Spectre of the gun. He did.
Spectre of the gun. Yeah.
Remember?
OK Corral.
Yep. You're right.
Yep. They go back to the OK Corral. They did some kind of cheesy time travel, but for the most part, it was
Star Trek 4. Love it.
Yeah.
Love Star Trek 4.
With the whale?
Will they go back for
Is
the
that the one
whales?
with the
whales.
Save the whales. Yeah.
And that's one of the I every time I like computer when Scotty's sitting at the why does Scotty have some like superhuman ability to use a QWERTY keyboard in that scene where he's like doing the equations, like he's just like click, click, like whatever. But I love computer.
I really like that scene though because they go, you can't do that. You can't give them the answer to creating
How do you know
glass aluminum or whatever?
The guy that did it.
How do you know?
You can't basically be Prometheus. You can't bring fire to people. Yeah.
Okay, kids.
Goes, how do you know that this isn't how they got it?
Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to quiz you folks on this real quick. What 19th century story is about time travel that's not by H.G. Wells and called The Time Machine?
Twain.
Oh yeah,
Mark Twain.
Yankee and King Arthur's Court.
King Arthur's Court.
Yeah, that's right.
That's excellent, but I think that's 20th century. This is 19th I'm asking about. And when I say it, you're going to go, oh yeah, because nobody realizes there's time travel here. A Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Okay, because he travels back, sees himself as a kid.
You're right.
He travels, and then he travels forward.
And then he travels forward,
Right. So Dickens using time travel in a spiritual way as a morality tale there to teach Scrooge a lesson. Right.
I never got the Ghost of Christmas Present, at least in the movie. It should be the ghost of just a little later. Because it's not like it's like later that day.
I always thought it'd be funny if they did like in that movie, like the Ghost of Christmas Present, and he's like, "Okay, ghost, take me away," and they just stood there.
They're just
because it's like, we're here. What do you want me to do?
I'm the know me better man.
1889, a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. 1889.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that. Awesome.
The judges have ruled.
Very cool.
So I got to pick on my wife. Her only knowledge of Christmas Carol was from Muppet Christmas Carol, which is a great movie. I love
that.
Works.
I love that. Works.
But they put Statler and Waldorf in there as Robert and Jacob Marley, and when she watched another version of it, she's like, "Where's Robert Marley?" And I mean, I don't want to pick on her, but her only knowledge of it is like Bob Marley. They put Bob Marley as the name of the other. They had to shoehorn Statler and Waldorf into the movie.
Yeah,
so
they come in pairs. Those actors
Marley,
come in pairs.
The hecklers, right?
We watch
That's brilliant.
At least once every Christmas season.
How did you guys feel about the Bill and Ted stuff? Because that was
time travel. It was kind of.
It was very goofy. But it was definitely
movies, so I didn't watch it.
Yeah, I didn't see the last movie.
I've only seen the.
But again, it was strange enough when I was talking about, they never go to the future. That was the one time when they took historical figures and brought them to the future. And I actually thought that was kind of funny. Some of when they showed those one scene when Napoleon's bowling, and it's like, these historical guys are just enamored with like bowling and all of this stuff, and like these are historical important figures, and you would think like, they would just be like a kid in Wonderland, or either scared out of their mind at what's happening, like cars and whatnot. But that I always thought was interesting. He's taking somebody of science or philosophy, bring them to the future and seeing like, were their predictions correct?
Well, it's like
that. I thought was a cool concept in that movie. Even though it was a comedy.
Your grandma about the internet, like trying to explain the internet.
Right.
Like, what you can. But I love the joke that like when they say you have this machine that has more computing power than anything.
Than the Apollo system.
I mostly watch cat videos and.
All right. There's a time travel story that involves H.G. Wells. It was a novel. They made it into the movie, I think, in the late 70s. It was called Time After Time. And I don't know if you guys have seen this.
Is that a love story?
To watch.
Yes, my wife loves that movie.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant idea because H.G. Wells himself, the conceit of the story setup is that he knew a guy who actually did do a time machine. That's why he wrote the time machine. And so Jack the Ripper, that was doing all this awful stuff in the time of H.G. Wells' era, escapes into our time in the 70s when it was set, and H.G. Wells comes after him in using the same time portal to catch him and take him back to, pay for his crimes in the 19th century, right?
Apparently,
so, but he falls in love with a modern girl in our time, or in the 70s. It's very, very cool. Anyway, you guys reminded me of that when you talked about bowling with
TV
show.
Napoleon.
2017. I just looked it up. There's a one-season TV show that they made.
Based on Time After Time.
Yeah.
Well, I know the Outlander show has to do with time travel.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very interesting.
Yes.
The other one, did you ever guys see a movie called Frequency?
Yeah.
That was it.
Yep.
Because again, they weren't technically time traveling, but they can communicate over time. And I thought that was a cool idea. There was another one with Sandra Bullock, I think Keanu Reeves, where they would put the mail in the mailbox, and like the person in the future would get the letter. I think it was called the mailbox, and it was like I think she was in the future, and he was in the past, and it's like he put the mail in the mailbox, and she would get the letter in the future, and I think he could do vice versa.
I think that was when they were in a cabin on a lake
or something like that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting, and I think eventually like he meets up with her in the future. Like they found a way to find each other, but through this time travel, and it was just, but you couldn't time travel outside the mailbox. The mailbox just happened to take this.
Interesting.
Which I think is a kind of interesting idea. It's like it's not really time traveling per se, but you are affecting time through this device that can transport things through time.
That's fascinating. That brings to mind another way to time travel, which is mentally. One of a great romantic favorite is called Somewhere in Time, where Christopher Reeve falls in love with a picture of Jane Seymour from the Victorian era. And who wouldn't fall in love with Jane Seymour from the Victorian era, of course. But anyway, beside that, so he finds a way to begin to surround himself with artifacts from that era. He puts on clothes from that era. He spends hours and hours focusing on the picture. He eventually, decorates a room dedicated to this woman. There's something he's obsessed with her that he almost has like a genetic memory of her in his mind. Yes. And so the idea is that they were connected at some point. He literally mentally thinks himself back into her time, and they meet and fall in love and have a love affair. And again, fantasy conceit, whatever. Yeah. But it was a great, it was a way to get past time travel without any technology whatsoever. Right. It was all here. It was all in his mind, and he experiences it for real. And it was a very well written movie. If you guys have ever seen it, it's
I have actually. Hubby and I spent our honeymoon in the Grand Hotel.
There was
in 1981, and they had photos of that movie all over in the lobby.
Yeah,
there was.
It's Hotel del Coronado, right in San Diego. Is that where it is, or
it's
no?
The Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island.
Okay. Okay. I knew they shot some of it. Okay.
No automobiles allowed there.
Nope. There was book series my friend Tom loves. I need to read it. It's one book. It's called The Forever War. And I need to read it. I need to go find the book and just read it. But it's about the idea that we started a war with this alien race. But in order for our soldiers to get and fight this war, they're going near the speed of light. So the soldiers who are going out would come back hundreds of years later. I remember he said one scene in the book where they were and then these two people in a shuttle, and they I think they were in love or connected, and they blew up, and one lost an arm and one lost a leg. And they told them, okay, we're going to send you back to the medical facility that would take you a few months to get back, going to the speed of light. Now, you're going to get a prosthetic arm and a prosthetic leg, so you can make it kind of weird or whatever. But by the time they got back to the medical facility, they were like, no, we'll just grow you a new arm and leg. because even in the 5 months, 50 years had passed in the advanced technology. So
that's excellent.
Yeah, the Forever War is a classic.
Cool.
I need to read
dilation.
the book because
Yep.
I know, like the end of the series, he said they come back. These soldiers are coming back from war, and they're talking like, "Oh, what are you doing? We're fighting the aliens, whatever." I'm like, "Oh, we made peace with them 500 years ago." Like the war had been over 500 years, and these guys.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, because of the time dilation effect. It's really cool. It's a cool concept, but I need to find the book and read it because he's told me so much. Like I just need to read this book.
Okay, that reminds me of this other one. Now you'll know about this one too because it was a film. It was about 2014, I think. It's called Edge of Tomorrow, the Tom Cruise movie, where fight, die, repeat, and he would.
Oh, that's based off.
They were fighting. They were fighting these aliens, and he would get killed, and he was caught in a time loop where he kept getting killed.
He got better and better and better.
But it was progressive because he learned how to survive with each loop experience to the point where he and Emily Blunt eventually figure a way to beat the aliens.
There's actually video games that do that. There's a video game I haven't played yet called Returnal, where apparently you live the same day over and over, and there's a lot of games where like you play the same thing over. And if you die, you restart it, but with the knowledge you've gained. And so you just keep dying and repeating and get better until you can defeat it. So they actually do that concept in video games,
I wonder if that, it makes sense that may have been inspired by a video game. Because it felt kind of that way.
It was inspired. It was a manga. The original name of the manga was Live, Die, Repeat or something like that. And
that's what they used for the
short story.
Yes, that's what they used for one of the promotional posters.
That was actually supposed to be the name of the film. That was actually supposed to be the name of the film, and they changed it. But the original name of the film, because in fact, you can actually find a Blu-ray cover where they actually put the original title back in the film just for fun.
Oh, very cool.
And I actually liked the original title. I thought it was much more evocative.
I do too. Yeah,
But it was that sort of like he's able to time travel and stuff. Yeah, the time loop. That was a fantastic. And of course, Bill Paxton was in there, and he's always so great. He's always so funny. But it was such a cool concept. And they returned to the
Look at Roland, man. Leaving or gone only a year, but they return to their grandkids. That's the other thing. Okay, we need to touch on this. Good call, Roland. We need to touch on the cost of time traveling in space. Now, this isn't technically time traveling, but speed of light. Yeah, speed of light stories where you go into space, you come back, everything's different, everything's changed. Are there any movies or stories that come to mind that did that well?
Alien.
Any of you guys?
Alien?
Yeah. Okay.
She was
all right.
Was it 60 years?
Something like
and she comes back and it's far in the future and they're like, hey kid, you cost us this multi-million-dollar ship and you're telling us this crazy story about a bug on the ship killing everybody, whatever.
Well, in the original director's cut of Aliens, they have a scene where they talk to her about her daughter because Ripley had a daughter that was
I have that version. I have the restored version.
They made a video game called Alien Isolation that I played a little bit of, which stars her daughter fighting the alien.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
But I love the idea of hibernation or sleep hibernation. In fact, one of our own comic books that maybe I'm working on deals with that very subject.
Oh, tell us a little bit about it, if you
can.
That's
the obsolete. I can't say any more than that. The obsolete deals with that a little bit, but I can't say any more than that.
Nice tease. Okay. What about Scott? What about your comic? I mean, is Steam Patriots gonna dabble in a little travel or no?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I've got alternate reality, but that has nothing to do with time travel. You could take it as my quantum whatever. On this timeline, Ben Franklin got the steam technology going, and that's it. I can't I don't have the brain power.
Have you ever thought about doing? I don't know if this is something because of the story you're writing. Doing something where somebody discovers diesel or gas powered engines, and there's a almost like the Tesla thing I've thought I
love the diesel punk style.
But now there's a sort of which technology is better sort of thing.
Betamax, we do Betamax and VHS.
Yeah, you can do that one.
Something like that. Which we know why VHS won, right? You guys all know that.
Yes, right? The adult industry. Yes.
I thought it was crazy. I'm
right.
That's
supposedly that's why Blu-ray won.
Is that
really?
Probably. That's
that's why Bluray won, because there were several technologies, and then that one was, adult industry.
Well, yeah, there was like HD DVD, which was Microsoft,
right.
and that came and went like that, a Blu-ray.
Right.
I think also because it was on video games and stuff too. But it is crazy how much the adult entertainment forms like beer and the other form of entertainment, just so we don't get cut off.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
oldest profession in the world.
Like steer history in certain ways.
Yeah.
Beer
Isn't that crazy?
Is crazy. Yeah.
It's powerful. Yeah.
So
there's a documentary called The History of Beer, and they talk about all the crazy things that have happened in history due to beer.
Because of beer. Yeah.
I love how these conversations take left turns.
Isn't that crazy? How we go off the rails.
Dean, before we get too far from the subject, we've talked plenty about Star Trek. If we're playing our Wednesday Wham Bingo, we haven't thrown in Jane Seymour. Which Bond flick?
She was introduced in Live and Let Die in 1973, and she was maybe 20 years old at that point. So all of us who were in that era, we fell in love with her immediately. She was everyone's favorite Bond girl for at least a couple of decades.
Dean,
how many
Bond
movies
for tonight
are there, Dean?
It was the hair.
Thank you very much.
How many are there Bond movies?
20.
What are there, like 25?
26.
I think
26, I believe.
Was the most recent
now?
26? Yeah.
Okay.
So they're actually Marvel, because I think was there 25 of Marvel movies. I wonder if like some competition to beat them.
That's interesting though that you bring that up.
If you count the Sean Connery,
Never Say Never.
Never say never.
Never
again,
say never again. Yeah, is that considered?
It's not.
See,
a
I don't
broccoli.
consider
It's
that.
It's not an Eon.
It's just a rework of Thunderball, really.
Yeah, it is.
Or if you count,
I'm gonna find out.
If you count Casino Royale with Peter Sellers,
the original book,
and
what I remember, wasn't that?
Yes, but
it was the original
1960s version of it. Plus, there was also a TV show
with
in the
Jimmy
1950s.
Bond.
Oh.
Yeah, Jimmy Bond. How crazy is that, right?
American James
Bond. According to the canon, there are 25, including No Time to Die.
Okay.
Non-canon are considered Casino Royale and Never Say Never Again. Just throwing in the Bond trivia here. But I also want to bring it back around to time.
Sorry, there's no time travel in James Bond. Sorry.
Well, no. Thank goodness for that. Earlier than my previously stated Christmas Carol, in 1819, Washington Irving touched on time travel with, wait for it, Rip Van Winkle.
Oh, yes.
Ladies and gentlemen. Wow. Think about that.
Yep. Sleep in the woods.
And that's just sleep. That's like he passed out on a really bad drunk, right? And wakes up like, dude, what happened?
Really had to go to the bathroom when he got up.
And then recently made in a bad teen movie recently revisited and called "Dude, Where's My Car?"
Classic.
So there you go.
Classic.
Right?
I think they're going to send that one out in the next space capsule, right? For the aliens to find.
Dude, where's my car? Oh my gosh! Still, the mind boggles on why Kutcher got so many movie deals. We're just like, he's a TV comedian. Stop it. But anyway, so how about that?
Good. I'm trying to think of any good time travel movies recently.
First Contact.
The latest one I remember that was good was,
I'm going back 20 years, but First Contact is one of my favorite Star Trek movies. I really like that one.
Yeah,
with the Borg. I could talk a lot about it, but that's a good one.
That one was good. Yeah.
Star Wars never does time travel, do they?
No, they don't. But there's rumors that they are. There's a phenomena. Real quick, Star Wars thing. We're not going to stick here.
Yeah.
There's a phenomena that was touched on in the animated series
Rebels.
Clone Wars.
It was that room
and
where
Rebels.
You go to different timelines.
It was the room. Yeah. Veil of the Force, the world between worlds, where you literally can walk through portals and different things. So again, multiverse for Star Wars.
Yeah. But I've heard rumors they actually want to redo the last 3 movies through the concept of that room too. So I know.
I heard that too. Yeah. I think Ahsoka, the series with her, is going to address the world within worlds since she was the one that encountered it. Yeah, and so I think they're going to touch on it, but whether that sounds more like internet nerds wishful thinking. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Because I was thinking there aren't any Jedi powers that touch in the manipulation of time, is there? I'm trying to think.
No, they can transport into our world from the Force Ghost power, from that world. That's really the most I've seen. Now, whether they travel through time. Now, Yoda can see the future. Like, he can see some things out.
But is that really time travel? That's more just clairvoyant.
No, that's visions. Clairvoyant.
Power.
Right. So, not that I'm aware of, but please don't give them any ideas.
Yeah, I know. Well, they keep adding new stuff all the time. So in the original Star Wars trilogy, no, they did. There was not.
No time travel, please.
Yeah,
not just because it's overdone and it can be overused and it can be,
But I never could. The funny thing is, I was trying to think. Even in the original Star Wars, wasn't Luke more of like a folklore, like a fable, like a prophecy to be filled, and not?
Yeah, he was more like to bring balance to the Force.
Right. So it wasn't so much they saw into the future
Anakin.
that it was him. It was more like a prophecy that he was possibly fulfilling. I think that was
it was Anakin. It was his father. It was
Anakin's
his father was the one.
But then Anakin, because Anakin fell, it became Luke's job.
It actually was
balance.
Still Anakin's. No, it was actually still Anakin's the whole time.
It was Jar Jar the whole time.
And the reason I say that is because the person who actually bring balance to the Force was Anakin, because he actually did kill the Emperor at the end. He fell from grace, redeemed himself, so he actually was the one to bring balance. He just fell from grace and came back, which is the Jesus.
And so then Luke, I guess Luke becomes sort of the
avatar to
last
make that happen.
Avatar, yes. Yeah. But that's a good point that he does kill the Emperor. So he redeems himself.
Do it. Yeah, he was the one to do it. He just had to fall from the light in order to come back.
To combat it, right.
To me, which I thought was a really cool, because you think like Luke is the one that brings balance, and it was like, no, it was always Anakin.
No, he helps. I said, you're right. He plays a part, but ultimately Anakin redeems himself.
Was the actual prophetic one to do it.
Yeah, and he actually says it in a hidden way in the script when Luke says, I'm going to save you, and Anakin says, you already have, because Luke's belief in his father, you can't minimize the fact that, he keeps telling him, they're still good in you. I feel it. They're still good in you.
Let go of the
right.
Hate. Right.
Yeah. And he's telling his dad, like, Dad, I know you're still a good guy deep down underneath all that stuff you've done. And there's a moment in the script where Anakin says to him, it's too late for me, son. Right. He says it's too late for me.
Well,
but the fact that he says
the balcony,
yes, the fact that he says that tells you, no, he's still there. He's still there. There's a grain of it, still a grain of good guy.
That was
still
my
hanging
favorite
in there.
Scene is when they actually meet and talk on the balcony.
Me too.
Because it was like that sort of impasse. He couldn't let go, so he couldn't come, but they could actually meet in a moment of peace, even knowing what was to come. They actually did, I know, strangely enough, they did a really amazing scene of that in the movie Heat with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino.
Oh, yes!
When they meet in the cafe, and he's like, well, he's like,
quit
robbing banks. He's like, he's like, hey, man, quit doing scores. It's like, I do scores, is what I do. And it's like, I catch guys like you. And it's like, but even when they end, he's like, he's like, if I feel you on me, I will not hesitate to kill you, not for a second. I mean, these guys are telling them, and absolutely love that scene. That movie.
It's a great scene, and you're right. It's very analogous to the Luke Vader scene on the balcony when they're speaking to each other.
Because it's going to happen. They're discussing it beforehand. Yeah,
and they know, and really, you see that father-son thing. Like, I wish it didn't have to be this way. But they didn't use any cheesy dialogue, but it's underneath the lines. I wish this didn't have to be like this.
He has to present him before the Emperor and all that. So
yeah.
That
was actually a good moment. A powerful.
Did any of you guys watch The Tomorrow War with Chris Pratt?
I have not watched it. Yeah, I've heard people say
I haven't. Is it any good?
But I do know
it's really
they're
good.
Getting people from the past and like replenishing the supply chain in the future to fight the. So I've been meaning to watch it. I've heard people say
his grown-up daughter who's integral to the survival of our species.
Oh,
because and here's the thing, it's a paradox, kind of like he leaves in the past and jumps to the future, but see, he leaves a family behind, and she is so pissed at him that she goes into research, and it all comes down to her to save everything.
So him leaving causes her to.
Correct.
That's good.
Butterfly effect.
That's clever.
That's good writing. Yeah, that's powerful. Right. Well, what about
Looper?
What about the latest?
Looper. That's the Bruce
Yes.
The one with Bruce Willis and stuff, right?
Looper,
Wasn't supposed to be like the hitmen? They go into the past.
They have to go back to I don't remember liking it that much, but
it wasn't that great. But it was curiously entertaining.
Yeah,
it's kind of like it was like driving past a car wreck. You kind of go,
okay, I'll watch it.
Is there a severed head floating around there?
I tried to watch.
We haven't watched the Adam Project yet. That's next on our to-do list.
Yeah, we haven't watched. I know that's a time travel one. That I tried to watch Tenet, and I like Christopher Nolan, but even halfway through that movie, I'm like, this is kind of a cool concept, but I just don't care.
What was the premise? Catch us up real fast.
The fact that you can man, it's even hard to explain. Things are stuck in time, and you could there's a thing where you would put it down, he would catch the bullet back in the gun because you're catching something as it's going in reverse time. They were basically saying there are certain objects that are going forward in time, and there's certain objects that are going backwards in time. So the bullet he had was going backwards in time, so he set the bullet, and the future of the bullet is actually not going forward; it's going backwards. He set the bullet on the it was the table, I think is what it did it. And he had the gun, the bullet jumped into the gun, which it looked like it was going backward, but it actually was going forward because the momentum of the bullet was going backwards in time.
Okay.
Interesting concept.
Yeah,
but
a little bit cerebral.
He lost the story. You're like, well, I don't care what's happening, but the concept was
right. A lot of people had that with the dream jumping movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, Inception.
Yes,
it had that same.
I love
that
movie,
same complexity. It's fascinating, but again, you're walking that tightrope of cerebral complexity versus dramatic, compelling storytelling.
My only problem with that movie is they didn't lean into the fact of the dream stuff. They talked about the stairs that would repeat. He did that once, and I was hoping in that movie they would do more mental tricks and dream-like tricks, but it just eventually ended up with dudes on skis shooting guns, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
it's like
what were you going to say, Barb?
Dreams, you could do some amazing stuff, and they did. It was
kind of a lost chance. My husband likes a straightforward movie. Good guy, bad guy, evil overcomes. And when you get into these really cerebral things, he gets very lost. And we walk out of the movie, and he goes, "Now tell me what happened."
That being said, Barb,
I got up.
Did he understand? Did he understand Spider-Man? Far from home, never coming home ever in the world.
Inception was way just. No.
There was some good ideas. I mean, I thought the concept idea was cool. I kind of just when they watched the City Bend, I'm like, well, that's cool. But they just needed one of my favorite dream movies. Talking about Inception was a movie called Dreamscape with Was that Dennis Quaid? One of the Quaid. But it's an old movie where he would go
old dreams. 80s movie.
Yeah. And I still there was one guy who was going to go into the dream with the president, assassinate the president. He had to go. But the way they would do the dreams, and there was that's how I envisioned dreams. The other one that did dreams really well was The Cell. Cell did some stuff in the dream, really represented the idea of things changing on a dime and just. And there was a lot of we watched The Cell in fine arts class because there's a lot of fine arts pieces, like the scene with the horse splits. That's an actual art piece where a guy actually took panes of glass and put it between sections of a horse. You can actually walk through the horse and see its intestines. And so a lot of the things that happen in that movie were actually art installations
based on art pieces. That's pretty clever. That's very clever.
It was.
Well, before we get too far off subject here, I wanted to get you guys' take on your favorite comic book time travel story. It can be Marvel, it can be DC, it can be Dark Horse, it can be independent, it can be Silverline, whatever it is. Favorite comic book
probably
time
Days
travel.
Of Future Past.
Oh man,
Days of Future Past for me. X-Men. That was only two.
Why is it your favorite?
It was my favorite because I just like the idea they showed. It was like that sort of Hail Mary what they sent, and it was originally Kitty Pryde, not Wolverine.
Right, Kitty Pryde. Yeah,
and I was not a big fan of the Days of Future Past movie. I was like, I really, I like the X-Men when they made their own stories. I'm like, we're gonna base a movie off of an original story. I'm like, then you're gonna screw up the stuff. I did like the future Sentinels in that movie with the time travel, but I really liked it how it was that sort of all the X-Men were dying, and it was like this Hail Mary to send Kitty Pryde, and she ended up doing it. Like this little innocent 16-year-old girl actually able to stop the assassination of that senator.
Very cool.
Yeah,
very
that
cool.
was
Dr. Doom,
and it was 2 issues.
Dr. Doom sends the Fantastic Four into the past, looking for some. I forget exactly what it is. some magical item. And I don't remember which issue of Fantastic Four it is. It's early in the run, and the Thing is dressed up as Bluebeard, the pirate, and doesn't want to go back to his own time period because he's accepted and looked up to as Bluebeard or Blackbeard, the pirate. And that was a pretty good story.
It's fantastic. It goes back to Fantastic Four number 5, according to the internet here. Dr. Doom's time machine remains the go-to standard. Dr. Doom first used it to send the Fantastic Four back for Blackbeard's treasure chest, which contained a gem that he needed.
Right.
It always contains a magic gem. Of course, they thwarted his plans, but the Thing is accepted as a pirate, and you're kind of sympathetic to the Thing's.
I love that.
Because I kind of want to go back where everyone hates me. Did you guys ever read the Avengers story called Avengers Forever?
Yeah, that's another one on the list.
It's like kind of standalone story.
Yes,
that one. That was my favorite Kang story.
Kang, he's
that's why I kind of fell in love with that character. Was that
the very first appearance of Kang is a time travel story.
Yeah,
and it's my favorite Kang. It's my favorite Kang story. I love it. It's Avengers number 8, I believe.
You know, there's some scholarly theorists and nerds who theorize that Kang is actually Dr. Doom. You know, from the far, 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 far future, come back and he's evolved. I don't know whether there's any truth to that, but there's kind of a cool idea.
All these different Kangs
debate comic book plots.
Isn't that crazy?
There's another debate that he's either his ancestor is either Tony Stark or Reed Richards.
I've heard that too.
It's Dr. Doom, Reed Richards, or Tony Stark. One. Those are the different theories about it.
Also, you guys go ahead.
He's the same character was Rama Tut. I believe there's another travel story with the Fantastic Four, Rama Tut, where he and Kang are the same person. So there's some of that. There's some of that going on as well.
Do you remember the X-Men story where Charles Xavier's son goes back in time to kill Magneto?
I seem to. I don't think I was
a Legion
book at that time. But I heard about it.
I don't think I read
the result.
Sounded interesting.
The result is the Age of Apocalypse, so it doesn't go well.
Yeah.
Okay, I do. I remember at least the Age of Apocalypse, but I don't.
Yeah, that's what caused that is him traveling back. So interesting. What about DC? Anybody have any DC stories they like that are time travel?
Well, I was just going to say that I don't have any comics at all that I can remember about time travel, so I'm gonna cheat and talk about the MCU.
Go for it.
I liked one thing about Endgame and hated another, and I bet you can guess about what I hated. I liked the fact that they took the stones, and they had to
Infinity Gems.
The Infinity Stones, Infinity Gems, and they had to return them to the exact moment that they took them. So there was no interruption in time. That made sense. Cap going back to the 30s.
I knew it.
The 40s, I mean.
Knew it.
Staying. Right. That is such a load of crap.
And not intervening, knowing what he could prevent.
And
living his entire life.
Well, that he would never leave Bucky out there to be tortured for 70 years. He would have to do something. So, and then the big thing was we can't change history, so we have to return the stones to the exact moment we took them. There's no interruption. And then Cap goes back to the 40s. Come on.
And none of their friends ever wonder, wait, who's this guy? Where did he come from?
Well, not only that, but would he have actually? Well, I guess would he technically have been? Would there be 2 Caps in the past?
He would have been the entire time knowing
he'd still be frozen. Yeah. He'd still be frozen in the ice.
Frozen. And then he'd watch all of that happen, and he wouldn't step in and say,
but it's getting late. But he's getting late. I mean, does it really matter? I mean, come on, dude.
Oh, gosh, here we go. It's off the rails again, kids.
The most important thing.
Right back to the adult industry.
But you're right. But it's that's my beef with time travel. Like, it opens that door. Like, if you're gonna open a door, Time travel opens like the biggest door for all the nitpicking. And that's why,
so true.
So true. It's
I
fine.
always just got the idea that he was hiding throughout time because you almost wonder he didn't want to change the future, so he was afraid that if he went and messed with all those things, he would change the future. So he let the way it happened as it happened. But there is that sort of like let Bucky be tortured. Like I'm going back to live in this sort of quiet house and live a quiet life, so I won't mess with the future. But he technically will. I mean, if you go back in the past, if you are just there, you are going to mess with the future in some
Well, not only that, but Peggy got married and had 2 kids. And he
and
just
those kids are gone.
those 2 lives.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, it's just not.
Who's to say it wasn't Steve Rogers that she married and had the kids with?
It wasn't.
I know.
You don't know.
It's
never explained. I'm thinking that's what happened. That's how I see it.
It was one of the guys.
That's a good way to look at it, Rob.
Yeah.
That makes you feel better. Go for it, man.
I mean, it's not lined out, but that's how I saw it.
So it was a guy and he had a limp. It was one of the guys from their unit that she ended up marrying from Steve's unit.
I don't know. I mean, there's so many. I mean, the funny thing is, to me, with Marvel, is if you start nitpicking the plots, you'll just find
you can't.
You just gotta stop and take it as it is.
Why?
Well, I mean, think about the Tessact, right?
Oh gosh.
I mean, okay,
and then
come
Gamora.
Yeah.
Gamora. That's going to be with Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
That's going to be a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Why did Marty McFly's ancestors in the 1800s look like his parents or look like his girlfriend?
Oh yeah,
look like him. Yeah.
It's so unrealistic, Scott. It's just not real.
But they had the forethought in the opening scene when he takes out it's the Twin Pines Mall. But then when he goes back in time and drives over one of the pine trees, when he comes back, it's the Lone Pine or whatever it's called.
They did that in the third movie too.
Yep.
You know that?
Yep. In the which one?
They did it in the third.
In the third one.
Too.
Yeah, so clever.
So when the Lady
so
Clara is supposed to go over the side, and it was called Clara Ravine, and when it comes back, it's called Eastwood.
Eastwood,
Ravine.
right.
Oh, nice.
And no one questions why this kid named Calvin Klein shows up for like a week and then completely disappears. And then when George and Elaine are married, he never questions why
the kid looks
just like
no, right?
Calvin Klein that you met in 1950. This is weird.
Just demonstrated. It just demonstrated why time travel stories have to be very carefully constructed.
There are fun concepts you just can't think about.
You can't think too hard.
Too hard. Yes. Unless you use the mystical conceit like Charles Dickens or Rip Van Winkle. But if you try to technify it too much and make it scientifically feasible, it gets a little murky. You know, you can go
further. I'm always amazed that like Tony Stark has nanotechnology to create his Iron Man suits, and yet the world looks exactly the same.
Right.
Dude, if you had that sort of technology, you'd be living in like Star Trek times.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So there's stuff like that where you just okay, whatever.
Well, see,
I know. You just got to go whatever.
Well, Doctor Strange, dude. Doctor Strange could do all of this magical stuff. Yeah. So why don't they just let him solve every problem?
Solve everything.
Right. Solve everything in the world, right?
Why have a guy with this shield running around doing it?
Yeah, I know, right?
The dude who knows the magic tricks. So
the magic dude, right?
In the comic book world too, like how come the Avengers don't just show up and help the X-Men or help Spider-Man? Or why are they sitting by?
It's because they're busy.
Right.
They're
busy on another
They're
mission.
off-world. They're doing
off-planet.
Don't you love that when they're off-world? Speaking of time travel, I'm going to time travel briefly and tell people about next week.
Yes.
We have a special guest, one of the founders of Malibu Comics, a comic book company that many of us started the business in. And his name is Tom Mason. He'll be on our stream next week, and he's going to be giving us the down and dirty behind-the-scenes secrets and talking to us primarily about why the big two are dead ends for creators these days. So he's going to be dishing the dirt.
All right.
It should be fun. I heard from the Silverline Sunday crew that he really made a great guest, and we're looking forward to having him.
He's a really fun guy.
next week.
Yeah,
he seems like
he was my editor way back when on Scimitar and some of the other things I did. So I'm looking forward. He's a great guy. He was a lot of fun to talk to on the phone back then. He's going to be even more fun to talk to when we could see his face.
Oh, it's going to be great. Yeah. It's going to be great.
I was fortunate enough to see him last at the Malibu 25th anniversary celebration at San Diego Comic-Con. They had some of us come out. And,
wow. Yeah, I bet that was fun. I bet that was so for everyone watching this, be here next Wednesday and you can ask him to dish dirt on whoever in the comic industry. It's gonna be fun on anyone. And we even Roland. I'm sure Roland's got some stories.
Nothing.
Oh no, surely not. Surely not. But anyway, as we like to say as we close out our show tonight, folks, we like to close by saying Make mine. Silverline, and good night, everybody.
I'm Alex Saviuk, and I just want to let you know, make mine Silverline.